Hey, buddy, why are you sitting alone in an empty restaurant?
Just having my coffee. Why?
I passed by a few times. You've been here a while. Looks like you're casing the place.
No, I'm just enjoying my drink.
I know the owner, and he doesn't trust people like you hanging around. Let me see your ID.
I don't have to give you ID without cause.
Then stand up. I'm not playing around.
It was one of those quiet mornings in St. Louis, Missouri, the kind where the streets held their breath between rushes, and the sunlight streamed through windows in soft, golden streams. Lou's Diner sat at the corner of Delmare Loop, its faded red and white awning and retro neon sign proclaiming a decades-old charm. Inside, the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clatter from the kitchen were the only sounds. Marcus Lawson, the owner, sat alone in a corner booth, sipping black coffee and scrolling through his phone. For 8 years, Marcus had poured himself into this place. From renovating the cracked tiles and peeling wallpaper to learning the craft of cooking meals that felt like home, every corner of Lou's Diner held his sweat and vision. Yet at 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, none of that mattered to a rookie officer cruising down the block. Trevor Holloway, 9 months out of the police academy, saw only a black man in casual clothes sitting alone in what he assumed was a closed restaurant. His mind, inexperienced and untested, jumped to conclusions faster than his training had taught him to question them. Holloway circled the block once, then again. He watched Marcus through the glass, noting the stillness, the single cup in hand, the casual posture. Could be casing the place, he muttered under his breath, though no evidence suggested it. He parked, radio clipped to his shoulder, hand resting near his belt, nerves thrumming with the kind of authority only a rookie could mistake for competence. As he pushed the door open, the little bell chimed above him. "Hey, buddy, why are you sitting alone in an empty restaurant?" Holloway asked, stepping inside with measured authority. Marcus looked up, relaxed, masking irritation with calm. "Just having my coffee." "Why?" The officer's eyes swept across the booth, the tables, the empty floor. "I passed by a few times. You've been here a while. Looks like you're casing the place." Marcus's jaw tightened, a familiar tension he had carried through countless microaggressions and assumptions. "No, I'm just enjoying my drink," he said evenly, placing his phone down on the table. Holloway's hand moved toward his radio, instinct overriding reason. "I know the owner, and he doesn't trust people like you hanging around. Let me see your ID." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "People like me," he repeated softly, incredulity creeping into his tone. "I don't have to give you ID without cause." "I'm not playing around," Holloway said, stepping closer. Marcus leaned back, a wry smile appearing despite the tension. "Funny, because I'm the owner of this place." Holloway blinked, confusion momentarily replacing his assumed authority. "What?" "I own Lou's Diner. Been here for 8 years. My name is Marcus Lawson. I built this place from the ground up. You're sitting in my diner, drinking my coffee, and accusing me of something I haven't done." The officer's hand hovered over his belt again, eyes narrowing. "Prove it." Marcus gestured toward the wall. Framed articles from local magazines, business licenses, health department certificates, all bearing his name, stood as silent testimony to his legitimacy. "All you have to do is look. Check the public records if you want. I've got employees coming back soon. Customers arrive daily. Why would someone break in just to sit quietly and scroll on their phone?" Holloway's face flushed, his rookie confusion and defensiveness warring with logic. These could be fake. "Fake?" Marcus asked, voice firm. "These are official documents with city and state seals. Do you honestly think I'd forge papers just to drink coffee at my own diner?" He leaned forward, meeting the officer's gaze. "Ask yourself why you assumed a black man in a sweatshirt couldn't be the owner. That's the question you need to answer before you accuse someone." Holloway muttered something into his radio, calling his supervisor. Marcus nodded, gesturing toward the wall again. "Please do. Document everything. Because right now, you're harassing me based on assumptions, not facts." Within minutes, Sergeant Karen Owens arrived. A seasoned veteran with 19 years on the force, Owens exuded authority that came from seeing rookie mistakes countless times. She assessed the scene quickly. One man in a booth, coffee in hand. Calm. A nervous young officer, fumbling with procedure and judgment. No crime. No disturbance. Just a misunderstanding rooted in bias and inexperience. "Holloway, what's going on here?" Owens asked, voice steady. "I saw this individual sitting alone in what appeared to be an empty restaurant. I investigated possible trespassing," Holloway explained, the words stumbling out. Owens glanced around the diner. Coffee brewing, lights on, kitchen staff prepping, an unlocked door. "Does this look closed to you?" Holloway hesitated. There were no other customers. "It's between breakfast and lunch. Most diners are quiet," Owens replied, turning to Marcus. "Sir, I apologize for this interruption. Can you tell me what happened?" Marcus straightened, voice calm, but sharp. "Sergeant, I'm Marcus Lawson. I own Lou's Diner. I was here during a slow period, having coffee and checking messages, when this officer entered and accused me of casing the place. When I told him I was the owner, he didn't believe me. He demanded ID without cause, refused to check the licenses on the wall, and implied he knew the owner personally. He refused to listen to reason and called you instead." Owens scanned the documents on the wall, confirming the licenses and business registrations matched Marcus's claims. She turned back to Holloway, disappointment evident. "He's the owner. Public records confirm it. You stopped a legitimate business owner based on assumptions." "I was just doing my job," Holloway stammered. "Profiling isn't proactive policing," Owens said. "It's harassment, and it's unacceptable." A familiar customer entered the diner, an elderly woman with kind eyes. She glanced at Marcus, then at the officer. "Marcus, everything okay?" "Mrs. Patterson," Marcus said, voice steady. "Just dealing with an officer who refused to believe I own my diner." Mrs. Patterson's gaze turned icy toward Holloway. "This is Marcus' place. Everyone here knows him. What were you thinking?" Word of the incident spread quickly through the Delmare Loop community. Regulars shared their outrage. Social media amplified the story. News outlets called for comment. Security camera footage showed every interaction: the officer entering, the confrontation, Marcus calmly pointing to his licenses, and the eventual arrival of the supervisor. The video was clear. There was no justification. Holloway's assumptions, fueled by bias and minimal experience, were evident for all to see. Marcus contacted an attorney within days, preparing to file a civil rights lawsuit against Holloway and the St. Louis Police Department. The claim cited racial profiling, harassment, violation of property rights, and negligent training. This wasn't an isolated rookie mistake. It was a consequence of a system that cleared officers for solo patrol with minimal supervision, even when warnings about judgment and bias existed. Holloway's 9 months on the job had created an incident that cost taxpayers, humiliated a business owner, and ended a career before it had truly begun. Marcus leaned back in his booth, watching the sun slant across the diner floor, the morning light catching dust in its beams. He had faced prejudice all his life. But this, being treated like a criminal in his own restaurant, was a humiliation that cut deeper. It was a reminder that ownership, success, and hard work could still be questioned simply because of the color of his skin. Owens left with clear instructions. Holloway would be reviewed immediately. Marcus received guidance on filing a formal complaint. The incident was documented. Cameras and witnesses provided a full record. Marcus took a deep breath, recognizing that this confrontation, though stressful, could be leveraged to enforce accountability and demand systemic change. The Delmare Loop wouldn't let this fade quietly. Business owners, customers, local organizations, they rallied around Marcus. The story became a cautionary tale for the police department and a rallying point for advocates pushing for reform. Marcus sipped his coffee again, thinking ahead to lunch service. He would prepare, serve, and continue his work. But now, there was a new layer to his daily routine, ensuring that the space he built remained one where he could exist without question, where his rights were respected, and where no officer could assume guilt simply because he was black. The morning had been calm, almost serene, until the collision of inexperience and bias shattered it. And that collision would set in motion consequences far beyond the walls of his diner. The rookie's assumptions, the city's staffing decisions, and years of systemic issues converged on a Tuesday morning in St. Louis. Marcus Lawson was ready, not just to defend himself, but to ensure accountability. By Thursday morning, Lou's Diner had become the center of the storm. Marcus Lawson walked through the familiar doorway with a sense of cautious vigilance. His staff noticed the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way he glanced at the entrance before settling in. Normally, the diner hummed with the easy rhythm of regulars and morning conversations, but now whispers of the Tuesday incident had spread like wildfire. Patrons were curious, sympathetic, and outraged all at once. Marcus's phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from lawyers, friends, and local activists filled the screen. News crews had begun to cover the story. Rookie officer accuses diner owner of casing his own restaurant. Security footage from Tuesday had gone viral on local news and social media. Every angle, every pause, every unjust accusation was visible for the public to judge. Holloway's assumptions were not hidden. His lack of verification and immediate leap to suspicion made the story explode online. Marcus knew he needed legal support. Within 48 hours, he had contacted civil rights attorney Lena Barrett. Barrett was known for taking high-profile cases involving police misconduct and winning them. When she arrived at Lou's Diner, she walked in with her trademark brisk confidence, her notebook in hand, ready to gather the details directly from Marcus. "I've seen the footage," she said, lowering her voice so only Marcus could hear. "This isn't just harassment, it's textbook racial profiling. And the department's failure to supervise this rookie makes them liable. You have a strong case." Marcus nodded, emotions contained behind a mask of professionalism. "It's not just about me. It's about every business owner who could be treated this way, every person who could have to prove their right to exist in a space they've earned." Barrett nodded. "We'll draft a civil lawsuit against Officer Holloway and the St. Louis Police Department. We'll include negligent training, violation of property rights, emotional distress, everything." Word of the incident had already stirred the community. By the next morning, Lou's Diner was filled with supporters. Regulars who had frequented the diner for years offered moral support, sharing how they had always trusted Marcus as the owner. Other local business owners expressed outrage, emphasizing that they could not imagine anyone being harassed in their own establishments like this. The Delmare Loop Merchants Association issued a public statement, condemning the officer's actions and affirming Marcus's ownership of the diner. Even as the legal process began, Holloway's name circulated in local discussions, online forums, and community meetings. People debated his training, his judgment, and the system that allowed him to patrol alone after just 9 months. Marcus noticed a trend emerging. The incident wasn't just about him. It was now about policing standards, implicit bias, and accountability in the city. Barrett explained the next steps. "We'll file the complaint within the week. The city has no defense if the evidence holds. The video, the licenses, witnesses, all confirm your story. Holloway had no cause to confront you. No law allows him to demand identification from a business owner without reasonable suspicion. And his refusal to verify your ownership makes the case stronger." Marcus leaned back, letting the legal reality settle over him. The $650,000 settlement he hoped for wasn't just about compensation. It was about forcing the department to acknowledge systemic issues. Every hour of preparation, every interaction with patrons, every day spent building his business now had to be defended in court. Meanwhile, Holloway was placed on administrative leave. His officers reviewed the incident and recognized the rookie's errors. He was under investigation, and the media attention made it impossible for the city to ignore public pressure. His 9-month career, built on ambition but crippled by inexperience and bias, was teetering on the edge. One afternoon, Marcus sat across from Barrett at the diner, the buzz of the lunch crowd around them providing a strange background. "I want this to change something," he said quietly. "Not just for me. Not just for my restaurant. But for anyone who could face this in the future." Barrett's expression softened. "That's why we'll highlight not only Holloway's behavior, but the system that allowed him to patrol solo without proper supervision. Departments must be accountable, and your case proves the cost of neglecting training and bias awareness." The lawsuit formally named Officer Trevor Holloway, the training officer who had signed him off prematurely, and the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. Allegations included racial profiling, unlawful detention and harassment, violation of property rights, negligent training, and emotional distress. The complaint emphasized that Holloway's 9 months of experience were insufficient for solo patrol, yet the department, desperate for personnel, allowed him to act alone. The city attorneys were quick to respond. They reviewed the security footage and public records confirming Marcus's ownership. Witness statements flooded in from neighbors, customers, and other business owners. Holloway had no legal justification for his actions. Every detail of Tuesday morning painted a clear picture of misconduct and negligence. Within days, Marcus noticed a change in the atmosphere around his diner. Patrons who had hesitated to come early now arrived on time, showing support. Community activists organized vigils and meetings, emphasizing the larger issue of racial profiling in St. Louis. Local media outlets covered Marcus's story daily, amplifying the public conversation about policing standards, implicit bias, and accountability. Marcus's staff, initially nervous, now rallied around him. "Don't worry, boss," said Tanya, his lead server. "We've got your back. Everyone knows this is wrong." Marcus nodded, grateful. He could continue running the diner, but every move now felt amplified. The coffee he poured, the orders he managed, every interaction in the diner became a quiet testament to resilience. Meanwhile, Holloway's legal representation advised caution, knowing the evidence against him was undeniable. His attempts to explain the incident as rookie error fell flat when scrutinized alongside the clear documentation and video footage. The narrative shifted quickly. This was no longer about a mistake. It was a direct consequence of implicit bias combined with insufficient training. Marcus felt the pressure growing, but he also felt the responsibility to maintain composure. Every interview, every statement, every post on social media was measured, deliberate. The community and city were watching, and he refused to let frustration dictate his actions. Every word he spoke emphasized fairness, accountability, and the systemic failure that allowed such an incident to occur. By the third week, the story had reached national attention. Civil rights organizations offered assistance, highlighting the importance of holding police departments accountable for training failures and racial profiling. Marcus's case became a rallying point for reform discussions in city council meetings, police oversight committees, and public forums. One evening, Barrett and Marcus reviewed the lawsuit's progress. "They're aware of the evidence," Barrett said, scanning the documents. "They know this isn't just about Holloway. They know the department failed to supervise and train him properly. The $650,000 settlement is achievable, and it's about sending a message." Marcus nodded. "I want them to understand the cost of assumptions. Not just financial, but human. 9 months of inexperience shouldn't ruin someone's life, or put me in a position where I have to prove my right to exist in my own business." Barrett smiled slightly. "You've turned an injustice into leverage for change. That's what this case is about. It's bigger than one officer, bigger than one diner. It's about every business owner, every citizen who could face profiling." As the weeks passed, Social media buzzed with support. Patrons posted selfies in front of the diner with captions like, "I stand with Marcus, and racism has no place in our community." Local radio hosts discussed the case, emphasizing the need for bias recognition and extended rookie training. City officials were compelled to respond publicly, promising internal reviews and reforms. Through it all, Marcus continued to run Lou's Diner. He served breakfast, poured coffee, and managed staff. Yet every glance at the entrance reminded him of that Tuesday morning, the humiliation, the anger, and the resolve. Every interaction was now underscored with a purpose: ensuring justice, accountability, and reform. The tension escalated as the lawsuit gained traction, press conferences amplified the story, and the rookie officer's career hung by a thread. Holloway's actions, once brushed off as a routine stop, were now examined in the light of public scrutiny, evidence, and systemic failure. What started as a single, quiet morning had evolved into a citywide debate on policing, race, and responsibility. Marcus realized that Tuesday's incident wasn't an isolated encounter. It was a window into the weaknesses of a system that allowed assumptions to dictate behavior. He thought about other business owners, other citizens, and the countless incidents that never reached this level of attention. This lawsuit wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. By the time the complaint was formally filed, Marcus had the full support of the community, local organizations, and civil rights advocates. Holloway's actions were undeniable, the evidence was irrefutable, and the city faced pressure to act decisively. Marcus understood the stakes. Financial compensation mattered, but systemic reform mattered more. The city, aware of public outrage and mounting legal risk, had begun internal discussions about training, supervision, and bias recognition. Marcus's fight had sparked conversations about policy changes that could prevent similar incidents in the future. The rookie officer's 9 months on the force had culminated in a single disastrous encounter. Marcus Lawson's life had been disrupted, his dignity questioned, but his resolve had only strengthened. By standing firm, documenting every detail, and engaging the community, Marcus was turning a personal injustice into a catalyst for broader change. Tuesday morning had been the spark. The lawsuit, public outcry, and media attention were the fire. And Marcus Lawson, in the corner booth of his own diner, was determined to see it through. Months passed since the confrontation that had rocked Lou's Diner. Marcus Lawson continued to serve his customers, but the tension lingered beneath the familiar hum of coffee machines and sizzling griddles. The lawsuit against Officer Trevor Holloway and the St. Louis Police Department had progressed steadily, capturing local and national attention. Every day brought updates from his attorney, Lena Barrett, news alerts, and statements from city officials. Marcus had grown accustomed to balancing the routine of running his diner with a whirlwind of legal strategy and public scrutiny. By mid-November, the city had made its position clear. It could no longer ignore the evidence. The security footage, witness statements, and Marcus's unwavering account created a case that was virtually airtight. Holloway's own defense struggled under the weight of documentation showing his immediate assumption of criminal intent, refusal to verify Marcus's ownership, and mishandling of the encounter. The rookie officer's 9 months of experience were clearly insufficient to handle solo patrol, and the city's negligence in supervision had left them liable. The negotiations began quietly, behind closed doors. Barrett represented Marcus with a clear objective: ensure accountability, obtain fair compensation, and push for systemic reforms that would prevent such incidents in the future. The city initially resisted, hoping to minimize the settlement, but the mounting public pressure made delay impossible. News outlets continued to cover the story, emphasizing the broader implications for racial profiling and police training. Marcus prepared for every stage of the process meticulously. Every morning, he opened the diner, greeted regulars, and monitored the legal updates. Patrons were eager to show support, often leaving notes or social media posts tagged with #StandWithMarcus. The story had become more than a personal grievance. It had evolved into a conversation about equity, responsibility, and oversight. One afternoon, Barrett walked into the diner carrying a folder thick with documentation. She sat across from Marcus, her expression serious but calm. "The city has offered a settlement," she said. $650,000. They're also proposing mandatory reforms, extended field training for new officers, bias recognition training, and community engagement programs. They want to close this without a trial, but the terms are strong. You need to decide if you want to accept it. Marcus absorbed the news, a mix of relief and gravity washing over him. This amount isn't just about the money. It's about proving a point. About showing that profiling in your own business has consequences. About ensuring no one else has to go through what I did. Barrett nodded. Exactly. The settlement is significant, not just financially but symbolically. It will be publicly recorded. Holloway's record will reflect termination for misconduct. The city is forced to acknowledge the failure in training and supervision. This is a precedent. Marcus agreed. The settlement was finalized, and within weeks, $650,000 was transferred as part of the civil case resolution. Holloway was officially terminated from the St. Louis Police Department. The termination letter stated plainly, Officer Holloway racially profiled a business owner in his own establishment, refused to verify documentation, and demonstrated judgment failures that make him unsuitable for law enforcement. Holloway's name was added to the National Decertification Index, effectively ending his career. Marcus released a statement, careful and composed. Officer Holloway is young. He made a choice based on how he'd been trained to see the world. But the real failure is a system that puts undertrained officers on the street and expects them to make good decisions without proper supervision. 9 months of experience is not enough. Nobody should have to prove they own their own business to a cop who makes assumptions. The public response was immediate. Community members praised Marcus's measured approach. Local organizations emphasized the importance of the case as a warning against unchecked bias and insufficient police training. For many, this was a victory not just for Marcus, but for small business owners across St. Louis. 8 months after the incident, the St. Louis Police Department implemented sweeping reforms. The field training program was extended from 12 weeks to 6 months. Mandatory business community engagement programs were established for all new officers. Bias recognition training became a prerequisite for solo patrol authorization. Early intervention protocols were strengthened for officers flagged during training for judgment concerns. Marcus testified at a city council hearing, addressing the broader implications of the case. I built this business over 8 years. I employ people. I pay taxes. I serve this community. And a 9-month rookie walked into my diner and treated me like a criminal because he couldn't imagine a black man in casual clothes might be the owner. $650,000 is what that assumption costs taxpayers. But the real cost is the message it sends, that even after years of work, even with licenses on the wall and customers who know you, you still have to prove you belong in the space you created. His words resonated deeply. Council members, police officials, and community leaders acknowledged the seriousness of the incident. The city committed publicly to monitoring the reforms, ensuring that future officers would receive proper guidance, supervision, and training to prevent such encounters from recurring. Holloway's public apology was brief but notable. I made serious mistakes based on poor judgment and implicit biases I didn't recognize. I accept full responsibility and apologize to Mr. Lawson. Marcus acknowledged it, but his focus remained on systemic change rather than personal grievance. This isn't about him anymore. It's about the system that allowed him to act this way. We need accountability at every level, from training to supervision to community engagement. The incident left a lasting impression on Marcus and his staff. Daily life at Lou's Diner gradually returned to routine, but the experience had changed their awareness of how easily assumptions could escalate into confrontation. Patrons continued to show support, and the diner's reputation as a neighborhood institution grew stronger. Marcus had not only defended his own rights, but also fortified the sense of community in the Delmare Loop. Local businesses cited the incident as a catalyst for discussion. Neighborhood associations organized workshops on interactions with law enforcement, emphasizing understanding rights and ensuring proper treatment. The story of Lou's Diner became a case study in how bias, inexperience, and insufficient supervision can lead to serious consequences. Marcus reflected on the broader implications. 9 months on the force isn't enough to patrol alone, he told Barrett one afternoon. The city learned that the hard way. But this case is proof that oversight, training, and accountability work. They can prevent incidents like this before they happen. Barrett smiled. And you've done more than anyone else could have. You've turned a personal violation into a public lesson, forcing a city to act and reform. That's rare. For Marcus, the settlement was just the beginning. The reforms ensured that the next business owner, the next person of color, the next citizen would face fewer obstacles and less suspicion simply for existing in their own space. The $650,000 was significant, but the larger victory was structural. The police department now had to operate with greater accountability, and rookie officers would no longer act unsupervised without sufficient experience and bias awareness. Months later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, much like the day Holloway had first entered Lou's Diner, Marcus sat in the same booth, sipping coffee. He glanced at the licenses on the wall, the framed articles, the photos of the diner through the years. Everything he had built, everything he had protected, was still here. The incident had tested him, humiliated him, and angered him, but it had also strengthened his resolve. The morning sun slanted across the vinyl booth cushions as Marcus took a deep breath. The diner was calm, his staff busy, the community supportive. Justice had been served. A career had ended, a city had been forced to acknowledge failure, and reforms were in place to prevent the same mistake from recurring. And Marcus Lawson, sitting in his own diner, finally allowed himself a small smile. He had won, not just for himself, but for every person who had ever had to prove they belonged where they were. The rookie cop's assumptions, the city's negligence, and the public's demand for accountability had converged in a moment that would never be forgotten. Lou's Diner was more than a restaurant. It was a testament to persistence, resilience, and the power of holding systems accountable. The story had ended, but the lessons remained. Inexperience, unchecked bias, and minimal oversight come at a cost. Marcus's case proved that the price is not just financial, it's human, emotional, and societal. And when the right people demand justice, change can happen. Marcus raised his coffee cup to the sunlight streaming in through the window. The road had been difficult. The confrontation had been humiliating. But he had endured, he had fought, and he had emerged not only victorious, but as a catalyst for change. Lou's Diner was back to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. And Marcus Lawson, the owner, knew that this time, no one would ever question his right to be there again.